All good, all good. Now we're here, and sadly we interrupted you, Richard. Sorry, you were in the middle of, I guess, talking about the sidechain and the hook sidechain, and the decision for launching there.
Yeah, should I recap where I started from, or
Yeah,
all
please,
right,
please.
okay.
Yeah.
So we've been developing Hook's amendment for XRP Ledger for about 3 years. It allows you to write custom logic to be installed on an account on the ledger. That logic can control the transactions in and out of the account it's installed on, and it can also emit new transactions and execute custom logic depending on what you want to do with it. Uh, we estimate you can do about 90% of all of the things that you can do with any other smart contract platform for about 10% of the cost to the network. Uh, we went through several iterations of building and refining the concepts and the code, and we released in the end three versions of the testnet. We're now currently on version 3 of the testnet, and the code has passed a independent security audit. It's a very large amendment, about 15,000 lines of code, and we had originally intended to get it merged into mainnet, but for a variety of reasons and politics that didn't end up happening. And Ripple have expressed their preference that big new features like hooks, go on sidechains, and they are very vocal about their support of a sidechain ecosystem. So they have their EVM sidechain and their CBDC sidechain and so on. And they also have a very large amendment they're trying to get merged into mainnet at the moment that is explicitly for supporting sidechains. So we decided, okay, we will put hooks on a sidechain. That's fine with us. So we're hoping to launch our sidechain, hopefully, this year, quarter 3 sometime. This is all subject to sign off by legal and so on. And our sidechain won't have an ICO. It doesn't have a new coin or anything like that. It does use mainnet XRP that you have to swap or transfer over to the new sidechain via a technical mechanism, or you can buy it off somebody who's already done this. So we expect there'll be a market where you can swap. I think that was the whole gist of what I was going to say. So I guess we're going to do Q&A, or have you got the agenda up now?
Yeah. So actually, thank you pretty much for that intro here and the recap. What I had also on the question side is, I guess what many developers are thinking is, in practical, how will a developer create these hooks? Are there like libraries or SDKs that will be provided? I know that there's something like hook script. Do you want to maybe talk about this a bit for how developers will be able to create these hooks?
Yeah. So at the moment, hooks are written in C. We don't want that to be always the case. Although, if you want to write very efficient hooks, writing them directly in WebAssembly language itself or in C is probably going to give you the best optimization and therefore the lowest cost to execute. But our intention is that there will be a higher level language called hook script that's loosely based on assembly script or TypeScript that you can write your hooks in. As for SDKs and so on, well, Vitsa might be able to better answer this question.
Yeah, of course. So, right. So at the start, there's the C hooks builder, which we intend to expand to as Richard mentioned, the assembly script flavor, which is called hook script, which works today. Actually, code is available. It's just not the experience we want just yet for developers. It should really be as easy as just using an API, a wrapper around all the underlying functions, where you can just call, for example, transaction properties directly by their property. I think that it will be mandatory for a good dev experience if there's a really nice SDK for JavaScript TypeScript to compile, to debug your hooks, to test your hooks, to upload your hooks to testnet, to migrate to liveness, all those things, to have simple APIs, simple SDK methods for it. It won't be there when hooks launch. It's going to be fairly technical if you want to use it at day one. But this is a call to all developers. If you have ideas about what that should look like, what would be convenient for you, let's have the discussion and let's come up with a spec for what it should do, what it should look like, and then find out if we can work together on or even contract a highly skilled company to build it with us.
This is great. This is awesome. Yeah.
So one more thing. If I don't think many people saw it yet. I will tweet about it later after the space, because the hook script repository and a couple of sample hooks written in hook script as it exists today is available, and it works, and there are build instructions, which means you can build hooks in a TypeScript like syntax. But more and more things will have to be abstracted away into nice methods and functions. What that should look like, we have some ideas, but if you feel like joining that discussion, please do.
Is Dennis on this call at all?
Yes, he's on the call. He's in the audience, and Dennis, feel free to come up if you want to speak about it, because I have seen him actually talking with some developers about. They were asking if they could have something where they can code via Python.
I am here.
Yeah, I thought, Dennis, you might want to share your thoughts and experiences on it. I think you are also working on an independent SDK.
Yeah, so originally Khan had built an sort of a client type of code base that basically built the code or built the hook and then was able to deploy it in sort of a client application setting. We then took that and created a full testing library. We have 20 or so hooks now, very simple functions, and then very more complicated, the ones that or there's a series that will be launched originally, and those are in there under audited, and that is an entire testing library that we actually use with a standalone Docker, and we're able to test that library. And then what our plans are is to create an SDK out of that, because it's already tested, all the functionalities tested. So I've got it down to maybe one or two functionalities, with then adding in your parameters and your grants. So that is the outlook on TypeScript. And then I do think the port over to Python should not be that difficult. And hopefully we can get something like that going. I don't know, exactly if that'll be around the day that it's launched or not, but as soon as the repo is public, we will open up this.
Yeah, so there's some nice tooling that Dennis has been building as he's been testing. Dennis is running quality assurance on sort of what we call the production hooks. These are going to be the hooks you can install on your account when the sidechain launches. They are written by us and pre-audited and pre-tested, so you can have something immediately working out of the box.
Yeah, awesome. Before we jump into the questions, and feel free in the audience to.
Can I jump in real quick there, because while I was managing some things in the background, I'm not sure if I missed that, and I just want to have.
No.
So okay, yeah. So my quick question is, there will be some security measurements in order for hooks being verified or audited in some capacity. Can you say one or two sentences about that?
From my side, or from an SDK point of view, I don't think we're focusing our goals necessarily on security. If you want to open up a pull request and put your C hook in there, I will review it, or we can work something out like that. The library allows you to create and set up a series of transactions to test your hook. So to be able to test it from this account, from that account, with this transaction, with that one. As far as security goes, or a process like that, I think VT actually plans to have sort of a hook store, or maybe you want to elaborate on sort of maybe that flow.
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at the smart contract world today, people interact with a range of contracts on, for example, what they call a Web3 website, just a normal website, and it interacts with with a blockchain and smart contracts there. But if you look at what the signing process looks like for end users, it's not really convenient. So you interact with a contract, you use a website to set something up, and then you take your client, your wallet, and then you see a bunch of hashes, and then you decide to trust that and sign it. It's there's a disconnect between the actual interaction with the smart contract and what you can verify in your client is going to happen. So the way we view this from XRPL Lab, from the SUM perspective, is that a interaction with a hook should always, or should preferably be companioned by an XApp or a web app, and the two should work together, where it's almost like an app store experience, where you either install the hook on your account, and that will get the XApp in your wallet, basically, because the wallet sees you have the hook installed, so it shows the UI for that hook, or the other way around, where you open the XApp for certain functionality, and then the first thing the XApp will offer is installing the hook it is for. And this user experience really makes it like Legos on your account. So you get a hook store concept where you say, okay, I want to install the firewall hook to prevent memo spam from coming into my account. I want to install the account protection hook so that if I lose my keys, my family still has access, or the notary can recover access, or there's a admin switch on my account. Oh, and I want to install the savings hook to automatically save a couple of percent of every asset I can specify that leaves or enters my account. And these installed hooks will be hooks on your account on the ledger, but they will also be XApps displayed in your wallet. And the XApp can help with making the things very visible related to that hook. So your settings, what's the savings percentage? What's the block list level? The transactions affected. So your transaction history, but from the hook context. What did the hook do to this transaction? And I don't think we're gonna enforce it, but I think it would make a lot of sense for some and other clients to, if they allow you to interact with a certain hook, one, the hook should be trusted, and two, the hook should be accompanied by a proper hook-specific UI. And we're probably not going to be allowed to call it the hook store, because Apple and Google will have their opinion about that. But yeah, that's the direction we're taking.
I mean, that sounds massive, right? And compared to smart contracts people are interacting with all the time, and then having their wallet drained because they don't understand what's really happening, and no one looks at code. So this is a massive advantage to the stuff we're having right now across
By the way,
the industry.
What I just shared is something that's going to be live the day the Hooks network is going live, and SUM is going to be updated to add full hook support. We're going to launch with this concept. So there are going to be a couple of hooks doing the things I just described with a UI, with a shop-like, store-like experience in SUM. And I hope that's going to raise the bar for other contract and accept developers.
So for the audience, feel free to write questions down there in the chat box for Richard or Wietse regarding hooks, because we would redirect this to you guys. But a question that prior to this call I got asked to ask either Richard or you, Itze, would be especially regarding this concept with the hook store, or basically creating these hooks and getting this to users. I mean, we have very recently, by the way, congratulations for the audit for hooks. I think that was massive and really great to see. But to go with the audit example here, how would somebody get his own hook app or hook into the XAM or hook store? Because you guys would have need to audit this, so it's not a malicious hook that people would then install, probably, correct?
Yeah, completely agree. So what we will do, especially at the beginning, is is audit these hooks, right? That's I would say our responsibility as the ones creating the client that everyone uses. Only audited, only whitelisted hooks are going to be easy to install. Just one click on your account. If you're a developer, or if you're a masochist or whatever, if the XRP you own are irrelevant to you, then you can probably enable a danger developer mode in some that will allow you to interact with other hooks. But it comes with warnings and dragons and more warnings. Because the average user shouldn't do that. And that means that to kickstart this entire ecosystem, we will have to spend time auditing the hooks, or we will work with third parties, companies, for example, the auditors who looked at some end hooks and other things, to see if they want to join this ecosystem by providing auditing capacity. And in time, I can see a market actually for the enterprise, for the commercial hooks, where there are companies specialized in providing these services.
And to be clear, you can still use a direct access to the new network to install any hook you want on your account. We're not it's not centralized around us. We're not gatekeeping that. It's just if you use our wallet software, then we want to make sure that you're not installing something malicious.
Yeah, totally understood, and that's great to see. I see there are not many questions down there. Daniel, do you have a question? Oh, Witze, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm while we're having this conversation,
Yeah.
I'm posting some tweets. So I just posted the hook script example. I'm gonna post some screenshots preview of what the hook store is gonna look like right now on my personal Twitter.
And I pinned it up here at the top, the one that you just posted 7 minutes ago. So if you look at top of these Twitter space, the Jumbotron, what they call, you can get directly to the tweet that Witze posted, and we will keep that up to date. Yeah, Daniel, do you want to have something for Richard or Witze before we? I guess I want to hear from Scott.
No, that's. I mean, I probably know a lot of stuff already. I just wanted to outline the experience. So I'm glad Witze could share how the hooks library. I'm just going to call it hooks library. Otherwise, I will call it hook store all the time. Like I said, I think that's massive. I'm not aware of anything that works like that. That's stepping up the game a lot.
Yeah, I think the overall concept is really, if the experience is well, this is what I heard from the developer community. If the experience is going to be good and they are very confident, especially with Salmon or Salmon, I should say, should be very, very good, then they have no doubt, because I guess the experience is really key here. But I guess with XRP Labs, that's going to be a great experience for the hook sidechain. Yeah, I would go actually over to Scott Chamberlain now, founder of Evernote. Very, very interesting. We know that Evernote has been around for a while. Yeah, it's been around for a while, developing, keeping their heads down, developing and creating something really, really awesome. I just want to directly jump into it, Scott. If you feel free to talk about it and start how you got to it, and yeah, what Evernote is.
Sure. Thanks very much. Firstly, I'm not the founder of Evernote. I'm the co-founder of Evernote, and the other founder is Richard Holland. So
Awesome.
we're very lucky to have such talent in the space because he's responsible for some of the great stuff going on. Evernote has been around since 2018. 2018, Richard and I demoed a working toy of IXRPL, our self KYC solution running on the XRP ledger, and that solution relied upon a toy version of Hot Pocket, which is the consensus engine that Evernote uses. And since then, it's grown out from Hot Pocket to then some other bits of code we call Sashimono, and then finally to Evernote. So we did that because when I first came on board as part of Ripple's Newbury University Blockchain Research Initiative, my pitch was all about smart contracts, particularly in the legal space. You say smart contracts do this. Well, let's spec a project and see if it actually can do that, and if possible, come up with a working toy solution. And I was just really lucky that Richard's the guy that put his hand up to help on the coding side. And so we've worked hand in glove in terms of this is what the law allows, but that's not the best tech solution, or this is, this space is so, the code has to go hand in glove with the law. So it's been a really good working partnership that's resulted in Evernote. And it exists because back in the day, Codius didn't do what we needed it to do. And so we started again, basically. There's lots of talk I've seen about, Evernote is Codius reborn and all this sort of stuff, and it's not. It exists because Codius is a hosting solution without a consensus engine built into it. What Evernote does is provide the consensus as a service. So as a dev, you don't have to spin up your own consensus mechanism. It's provided inside the box of the host that you upload your contract to. So basically, Evernote is, you start with a Linux machine. On that Linux machine, you put a normal app with inputs and outputs and rules and a state. We have a piece of software we call Hot Pocket, which is the consensus. It's a UNL consensus engine that connects multiple instances of that app together. And so now you have a DApp that is running on multiple machines and maintaining a canonical state between all of those instances. And then we said, well, that's fantastic, but we need something that, if you have to spin up all of the machines, then this isn't very decentralized. So we developed Sashimono, which is a hosting solution, which you run the host, and then anybody can upload their DApp into a slot on your host and choose a multiple range of such hosts, and together stitch up what is effectively a mini blockchain running multiple instances of their app on multiple machines that run the Sashimono software. And each of the apps are inside their own jail that separates them from each other, and then all of those apps are inside a jail that separates them from the machine. And we said, well, that's fantastic, but now we need to know who's on the network, who are the machines running Evernote code. And so we need a registry, and that registry could have been a centralized registry. It could have been any number of things, but we decided we wanted it to be an account on the XRP ledger, because if we do that, we get a decentralized registry. It's a centralized point. It's on one account, but it's part of a decentralized network. And then the problem became that account would have multi-sig keys, and the people who controlled those multi-sig keys would effectively be the owners or controllers of the register, and therefore the owners and controllers of Evernote. And that's where hooks comes in. For us, Evernote can't exist without hooks. We use hooks to solve three problems. Firstly, we have a hook on an account that runs our registry. And so that account automates the process of people logging their machine with the registry. They get an Evernote, they get a registration NFT in return that evidences their membership of the network. And it tracks the issuing of that membership and the redemption of that membership. There is not a stake, it's a deposit that hosts must pay in Evers to be a member of the network. And that deposit reduces in size as the network grows, and you get your deposit back as that deposit fee reduces. It's a way of ensuring that the early adopters benefit from the technology, which is the obverse of what happens. Normally what happens is the early adopters are the ones that suffer all the cost and everyone else gets a cheaper product. Well, in our model, the early adopters never pay any more than the latest fee for being registered on the network. The second thing that our hook does is it controls the distribution of Evers. We need our own currency for the Evernote network because there's a fee for registration, there's a fee for hosting. We need that fee to be able to float and find its own place in the market. If we charged fees in XRP, the problem is that XRP fluctuates in price. We would need to track that price somehow. We would need code that updated that price, and then we have to work out, well, what is the fair price for someone to register on the Evernote network? What is the fair fee for hosting? And by using our own token, we don't have to worry about that stuff. We can set the price in the token and allow the market to determine the value. What the hook does for us, and I think this is one of the sexiest things about hooks for me, and it's worth other dev teams, I think, really grokking this fact. Without hooks, we would have a honeypot. You would have all your Evers existing in an account. There would be multi-sig keys, that's fair enough, but we've seen plenty of examples where they get compromised and the account can be drained. And also in the current regulatory environment, you're something of a custodian or a treasury, or you've got some sort of liability for being the entity that controls the keys and the way in which the Evers are issued. Using hooks, we put all of the Evers into the hook and they're distributed by the hook according to mathematical formula from the hook. And now we get a completely decentralized treasury. So we've taken what is an issued currency. Evers is a currency that's issued on the ledger. It's not native. But by putting it inside a hook, we get something that's counterparty free. It's now emitted according to the hook, and that's it. And I think there's plenty of projects that can benefit from that kind of functionality, because for the first time now it is possible to have a truly decentralized token as an issued currency on the XRP ledger, which means there are more business models that you can profitably deploy compared to at the moment. The problem is at the moment, really, you're down to a centralized, you issue an IOU and all kinds of regulatory problems arise from that. We can solve that with hooks. The third thing that our hook does is it provides the rules for our governance game. All validators on the so everyone who holds a registration NFT for the Evernote network can participate in the governance game, which determines that's simply a capacity to change a hook. And the other thing that it does is there's a capacity to vote off dud validators. So there's a bit of social consensus that's necessary. It's there are ways in which you could end up with malicious machines that the hook can't detect, and that's a bit of social consensus to prune the system of dud hosts. And so from out of that network, we get something that's global, that's permissionless, in the sense that anyone can run an Evernote host, and then anyone can upload a DApp to an Evernote host. And the DApp that you can deploy in Evernode can do almost anything that you could otherwise do with a Linux machine. So it's incredibly flexible. It can store data, perform computations, it can connect to other machines or other networks. The sort of thing that it can do really well is if I had a network of say 10 machines, and I needed to know what the temperature was in Canberra, I can program my DAP in such a way that 5 of those machines are delegated to contact the BOM, the Bureau of Meteorology website, determine what the temperature is, reach a consensus among themselves about that temperature, and then report that back as the canonical truth for the chain. So you get a native Oracle functionality out of Evernode. We are in the final stages. We're hoping to launch very soon after the sidechain launches. We can't do anything unless Hooks ends up somewhere, whether on a sidechain or on mainnet. We are in the final stages of a grant application to Ripple as part of XRPL grants. We have asked money to get our 3 hooks audited by the same company that XRPL Labs used to audit the hooks code itself. So they're probably the best company in the world to do that. We have 109 at last count, 109 people running beta nodes on our beta net, which has been absolutely fantastic for testing what we've done, for discovering bugs, both in terms of hosting and in terms of uploading contracts. And so for devs that are out there, part of the purpose of the beta net is to give you a live environment to be able to develop dApps and upload them on the Evernode network, and we're in the process of assisting people to do that. We are an incredibly lean team. It's not an awful lot of funding that we've used to get this launched. It's stuff that I've squirreled away from my research budget as part of University Blockchain Research Initiative from Ripple. So we, it's not an all bells and whistles, singing and dancing team that can do everything that you might do if you'd raised $4 billion in a scammy ICO. But we will launch with enough of a network that we can build from there.
This is really, really great, and I just want to give a huge compliment to the Evernode team. When I go to the GitHub issues and I participated there a lot, reporting my feedback and things that I came across, they were super, super fast in response and solving the issue. And I guess overall you can really see that there is a lot of love into the detail here. Very, very excited for it. Scott, I really want to also mention that what got me excited is that Evernode is so much more than just our smart contract platform or layer 2, because as you mentioned, it's essentially a Linux machine, and especially on the discussions around EVM smart contracts. I think you guys also opened a repository in GitHub where you showcased that you could do this also with Evernode. You can deploy EVM smart contracts there, very, very easy, and have provided, I guess it was an SDK to showcase. Dennis also posted a very, very nice LMBD SDK, I guess. Very, very cool. And so my question here would be, with the current state that you see Evernode, and what you guys already built so far, what are the most biggest challenges personally you would say you came across in building this layer, this protocol layer, and what were your learnings in solving them maybe?
I guess there's several several challenges. One is we've been building Evernode at the same time that Richard's been building hooks, and so it's hard to build something new on top of something else that's being built. And it's been lovely that the two, been able to work together to make that happen. We're just very fortunate, right? I don't think it's a way that anyone else would be doing stuff. We learned in the process that we had to do a lot of retooling because we ended up with a hook that was way too expensive. So the good thing about hooks is that it protects its ledger by charging effectively for the size and complexity of the logic that the hook executes. And when you pay your fee, you have to pay your fee based upon everything that the hook might be asked to do, even if you're only asking it to do a tiny little bit of that thing. And that can result in a really large fee to do a very simple thing. As a consequence, that's how we ended up with 3 hooks, and we've done lots of work to try and minimise the cost of making that happen. And we've been able to do that, and I think that's, it's a big feather in the cap of hooks, in the sense that it imposes that discipline on people building on the ledger, and it does protect the ledger, but it does mean that fees for executing a hook are magnitudes greater than the simple transaction fee that you otherwise get charged on the XRP ledger. The third challenge that we've got at the moment is simply managing expectations within our budget. As I said, we're a small team. We've got a small amount of money. We are trying to build enough that we have a thing that's there. And I know there's lots of nice to haves that it would be lovely to have, and there's lots of things that the system won't have that people think should be there. It's just not possible for the team to make all of that stuff happen and at the same time get the product in the right shape, ready for launch. So there's a bit of that. It's the real big challenge for Evernote has been explaining it. It's a different architecture. Nothing else like it exists. And I keep telling the team, look, we have to make it exist in order for it to be explainable. And that means that the growth in Evernote, it'll take a little bit of time. I don't expect it'll just explode overnight in the same way that ChatGPT did. But once it's up and running, I'm convinced people will see the benefit of it.
Yeah, it's Evernote's really hard to explain. One of probably the easiest explanation is it's a meta blockchain. It's a blockchain for launching blockchains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even
like,
that makes people's eyes glaze over, right? So they can't. I have to. Look, as an example, we built a toy version of what we call Digital Cows, which is a 24/7, 365 platform for trading interests in Australian cattle. And the way it works is that the stock and station agents who want to be part of the service become a member of the service and run a node, and they then apply to one or more notaries in the system for roles within the system. You can be an agent, or you can be a farmer, or you can be an investor. The cows' data is scanned in, then each of the cows are put into a herd, like for like. So if you've got Herefords of a certain age, you can put them all into a vault, a cow vault. And from that vault, you mint tokens that represent a percentage of the sale price of the herd. And the stock and station agent is responsible for distributing the sale price. The stock must go through the stock and station agent to reach market. So that's one of the controls. Effectively, the agent acts as an oracle for the system. There's photos of the cow. When you upload the cow, you can take photos of it. You can do all sorts of stuff so that people can confirm that the cow's real. It's a fantastically sexy little working toy of an app for trading cows, and it runs wholly on Hot Pocket. And so it's an app it feels like you're using an app on your phone.
But it's decentralized. There's not a central party that runs it.
but it's completely decentralized. And one of the benefits of it is that if you tried to run it as a centralised service, there'd be too much politics in the Australian beef industry, and one or more of the industry bodies would have to own it and run it. Instead, we get a service where if you want to be a member of it, you run a node, and now the politics is removed. We're using the same model now. We've begun a research project using Hot Pocket and Evernode to tokenise Aboriginal art, so that you can confirm the provenance of the art, and then you can track the ownership of it and do automatic payment of royalties back to the artist every time the artwork is sold. And we're looking there at potentially incorporating a little bit of AI into the system so that you can scan the art and it can confirm whether it's a legitimate, whether what you're looking at is a, is the legitimate version of the art or some sort of weird copy. That's all possible because Evernode is just the Evernode DApp is just a decentralized application. So if you do it with a normal app, you could do it with Evernode decentralized. And again, for the Aboriginal art community, it's the same deal. If you're a gallery or an Aboriginal land council with the resources to run a machine, you can join the network by running a node. And now we don't have the politics of it having to be owned by one particular land council or it having to be a government initiative or all of that sort of stuff. It's just a service that those who want to participate in the service can help make exist. And I think that's the sort of thing that I anticipate really, certainly for me, the use cases that I'd be looking at are those examples where I can avoid the politics of a situation by decentralising the service using Evernode.
I would like to ask, because I know he played around a lot with this technology. We're discussing what Evernode is, and I think the perspective from a dev, I would like to ask Wojciech to explain something about what it is to him. What did you build? Explain a little bit if you'd like, and what does that effectively mean for you as a dev or for users?
Yeah, sure. I've been on Evernote developing it, researching it, talking about it with many people for a year or two now as an independent developer. And right now I'm working on a library on Node.js called DKM, or Decentralized Key Management. And it allows dApps on Evernote, so essentially Hot Pocket clusters, to manage their own XRP ledger accounts in a decentralized manner. So right now, the XRP ledger allows accounts to be multi-sig enabled accounts. So you could integrate in signers, multiple signers, up to 32 now from the previous 8 signer entries limit. And those 32 signer entries could represent independent nodes on your cluster, essentially allowing your own Hot Pocket cluster or Evernote dApp to be its own XRP ledger account on the XRP ledger, yeah. And right now I'm going to release DKM v 0.2.0 today. It has been reviewed by Leighton. I was about to, deploy it yesterday, but unfortunately Leighton was busy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, because Scott was saying, about support, and also Richard and Scott were talking about how difficult it is to explain. I just wanted to say, somebody who I definitely don't need to explain anything is definitely Wojciech, because he really figured it out and is at the forefront of it. And so Wojciech, just to add on this with, you said DKM, and by the way, congratulations. I think you won also one of the hackathons, if I'm correct. Yeah, you got the second place, I guess. Really, really great. So, with from an independent developer side, what would you recommend also other developers to look into for developing? Where do you see, or have you seen challenges to get in, and what are things where you could say, were pretty easy actually to figure out?
Yes. So, as Richard and Scott has said before in the past, explaining and teaching Evernote to people is quite difficult since the framework that is being used right now by Evernote, the underlying design, there is a marketplace and there's a consensus engine called Hotbucket. And you need to understand a lot of things as a developer since you're working with uh, consensus, you're working with the computational hardware of your instances on a decentralized network, and a lot needs to be taken into account as a developer. But really, if you're looking into Evernote at a first time perspective, I guess you'd make most of your time uh, learning about Evernote if you were to look into the consensus side, learning about distributed systems, learning what the XRP ledger is, how Evernote utilizes it, and how the marketplace works hand in hand with Hotpocket to create a decentralized application atop of Evernote. And I like to think Hotpocket as a engine, a literal car engine, and the hosting marketplace on the maintained by the XRP ledger via hook as the oil that powers the car engine. So again, Hotpocket instances or Hotpocket nodes are literally bare bones computers. You could interact with the RAM, you could interact with the disk space, and you could interact with the processor of the node itself.
Great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It's not, it's powerful, but it's not magic. So we keep on coming across examples where, in theory, stuff that you can do, you can't do. Richard's been through all of this with me repeatedly, where you want to use Evernote to do stuff on Evernote, but you end up putting a hat on a hat. Consensus is a weird thing, and you can't use consensus to do consensus. But it is incredibly more flexible and scalable than any other DApp solution that I'm aware of. And part of the problem with that flexibility is that if you can do almost everything, then it's really hard to explain to anyone how they can do anything.
I can offer an explanation, which is sort of, I guess, historical. Is kind of how I came up with the Evernote idea in the first place. So the XRP ledger is a decentralized system, yes, and it has consensus, but what is it even doing? What's the consensus do? Well, at the heart of it, it's just an accounting app, right? You have XRP, you send it to somebody else, they have XRP. It's just an accounting app that's distributed across lots of computers. That's the XRP ledger. Well, suppose you could just take the accounting app out of the XRP ledger and then put your own app in. That's the idea. So Evernote lets you spin up your own XRP ledger with your own app inside it, basically.
Yeah,
So
that does make sense.
I want to throw something in real quick that's pushed around Twitter as well, right? And I don't want to make it about like chain politics or something, but how do you see the hooks and the Evernote combination compared to what Flare's trying to offer us?
To be honest, I don't. It's been a while since I've looked into Flare. I'm not even sure what they're offering. So I can really only speak to hooks and Evernote.
I think I can answer this.
Yep. Go ahead.
With with a disclaimer that the same goes for me, of course. So what I do know about Flare is that they have built this EVM supporting platform that bridges networks and chains by what they call the state connector. They have an Oracle-like solution where you have assets and asset prices brought into this one network, Flare. And then if you bring all the different assets from different chains and price information, etc., to one platform, then you can use all those assets in one ecosystem, basically. So they're what they call wrapped assets, right? Representations of that asset locked on another chain, which means you get assets from all kinds of different chains on one network. You have pricing information for all of them, and then well, you can use them all on this one network, which is really focused at the assets, bringing the assets from different networks to one place. If you look at what Evernote, for example, is doing, it's like the best version of Legos. You get this big box, and you can build whatever. Like, come up with it and you can build it, and you benefit from all the things we like from the blockchain space, right? Single source of truth, clear history, shared states, shared distributed state, etc., etc., etc. And then what hooks is to the XRPL, it just makes the XRPL composable. It makes the XRPL do whatever you come up with within the boundaries, of course, of what you can do. You can influence behavior before a transaction is applied and after a transaction is applied, but that gives you a canvas to paint on, to build creative things, to do enterprise things, to do compliant things, to do fun things. All on the ledger we already know and appreciate for having a lot of features natively and being fast, being cheap, being efficient, being very easy to work with. I think all the developers who played with the XRPL know that, like, the things the XRPL can do are just really easy to address, well documented. So hooks make the XRPL a very interesting platform for all the things you couldn't do on the XRPL, and then Evernote allows you to extend that to anything you'd like to do. So it's not focused on just bringing the assets together on one place. It's focused at building whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like the analogy you said with the Lego, and I think especially with also from a network perspective, we cannot keep adding one by one features to the layer one and expand the code base where we have with as a composability and with hooks, and of course with Evernote the possibility to do so much more without going to the tedious process, I guess, of adding layer one code changes. I want to redirect some questions here we have in the chat box, definitely. I guess the first one would go directly also to you, maybe, or Richard, regarding the hooks sidechain. Would be, will there be enhanced features and amendments besides hooks on this sidechain? Like, I guess some people were thinking about the AMM or something. But yeah, will there be more enhanced features besides hooks on this sidechain?
Shall I answer this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we don't intend to stop building after it launches. We're not going to promise anything, but we're looking to have a much more fluid feature turnaround cycle than the mainnet has, and we're inviting developers as soon as we launch the chain and make the repository public to come submit their amendments. And we're going to we intend to continue adding features and making the ledger more feature rich over time.
I can share some things on the changes you will actually see on day one when it launches.
Please.
So for one thing, it won't feature, and now everyone's going to scream and panic. Please don't hear me out. Wait a second before you do. It's not going to feature XLS 20. Because, and I can explain why. There's a perfect technical reason for that. If you look at how XLS 20 is implemented, it favors using less account reserve, for example, by putting NFTs on pages. So one page contains multiple NFTs. One page has one ownership reserve of 2 XRP on mainnet today, which is nice from a end user perspective looking at their reserve, but at the same time it comes with complexity. It comes with complexity for developers because they have to take the page logic into account. It comes with some complexity for end users and for tooling on the ledger, because you cannot just go to the ledger and say, hey, I have this NFT, who owns it? No, you'll have to have an indexing service running somewhere that says, okay, this NFT is on this page is owned by that user. Now take hooks. Hooks are going to allow people to hook into the transaction behavior, right? It can execute before or after a transaction is committed, which means you might want to look up an object like an NFT directly by its hash or owner, which means they should be native objects on the ledger directly owned by the account, not on some page that has to be indexed. So to efficiently work with NFTs with hooks, they need to be native objects. And one of the other things we're going to see with hooks, so it's a different NFT standard, and it's going to be much more compact and easier to work with. But it's a hard migration if you want to have your project work on both networks, right? Mainnet and the hooks network. Another thing that's going to change on the hooks network is a governance like hook that for example allows accounts to vote on things, not validators per se, which is very interesting and again can be very transparent to end users as well, because it can be in an XApp, for example. You can vote in an XApp, you can see other votes in an XApp. And because it's account-based, it can also be nested, right? You can have a nested group of people casting their votes collected into one vote that is part of the network governance. It's probably going to have lower reserves to make it very easy. Because as we mentioned, people are going to use real mainnet XRP on the hooks network, right? That's going to be the asset there you use it. That's what you use as gas to pay to install your hooks, to execute your hooks, to send your transactions. And we want to make it a no-brainer also for non-crypto users, for retail users, to just jump in and use this. And developers should be able to abstract this technology away, use it in their user-friendly non-Web3 apps from the perspective of the end user, and have reserves so low that the developer might just fund all their users' accounts to get started. So there will be some changes, and when we're looking at new features versus, for example, amendments currently being developed for to go live one day on XRPL mainnet, there might be some diversion. It might not make sense to activate everything that is activated on mainnet on hooksnet, and vice versa, right? But one thing we will do, the things we built for the hooks network that's going to be launched, it will be open source. Most of it already is open source, and it will be available for PR and amendment on mainnet. So it's up to the entire existing ecosystem and everyone who's working with mainnet to decide if the features we are building should have a place on mainnet as well. And I can think of a couple of features that I would love to see go live on mainnet. At the same time, I think it makes sense for all of us to have experience with those features on hooksnet before we consider them for mainnet.
We also have IOU escrow, which Dennis might want to talk about a bit. That's going to be live on the new network.
I have a question though. Could a new, technically speaking, with hooks and its flexibility, could a new NFT standard be created by developers, similar to what Ethereum is doing?
Make a new NFT standard using hooks only?
Yes. So it's not native to Ripple.
You could certainly do that. You could write a hook that manages NFTs as a state inside the hook, and then you could have that hook on a black hole account. And then if everybody socially agreed that a state entry on that hook represents an NFT, and you have mechanisms for transferring ownership of that state entry essentially inside the hook, you could certainly do that. That would fairly closely mirror the way it's done on Ethereum, indeed.
One thing to add here for those listening not familiar with terminology like state, when we mention state, so a hook can store arbitrary data on the ledger, which is relatively expensive because we shouldn't go about and dumping all our data on a distributed ledger. It's not meant for that, but a hook can install can store arbitrary data like a key value store on the ledger if it pays for it, which means you can basically do accounting in your hook. You can say, hey, I have a list of objects and they're owned by those accounts. Or, hey, I have those accounts and they have those balances within the hook state, within the storage the hook consumes, which means you can track anything and mutate that data based on your own logic in the hook. So again, blank canvas, Legos, just build whatever you like.
There is also here a question for Richard, I guess, in the audience. How many hooks can each account
10.
have? Is there a limit? 10. Okay. Is this an arbitrary number?
Yeah,
or
it's basically
just
arbitrary. It used to be 4, and then we added 6 to it. The hooks execute in a chain, so you get to decide the order of execution. So if you have, say, 3 hooks, then you can decide. So each hook goes in a slot in your account. It's like hook slot 0, hook slot 1, and so on, all the way up to 9 at the moment.
Okay.
10 seems like a reasonable amount. We realized that we needed more than 4 because the network launches with 4 hooks that everybody might want to install, and then there's no space for anything else. So we decided to upgrade it to 10, but an amendment could upgrade it further. It's 10 at the moment as it's arbitrary.
Okay. And speaking of amendment, there's the question of how will the network size first be? How many validators, and how will there be like a similar voting process, or will it be quicker than on the mainnet?
It'll certainly be quicker. I think the code currently is a 5-day lock-in period. Vita can speak to the number of validators there will be.
The validators on Hooksnet at launch, right? Because let me start by saying that we decided that the ideal amount of not per se governance participants or validators. They're basically one thing. So there is an ideal amount of 20 governance participants on the new network. Now we don't have 20 at launch, and we also don't want to rush things and just assign those slots to anyone because let's see what happens. I think there are places for really big players, entities, almost country level or bank level. If we're going to do really interesting things on the Hooks network at some point, let's not rush to give those spots away. But we decided on an ideal amount of 20. If you go lower, I would say it's not decentralized enough when it comes to voting and governance. If it's more than 20, it becomes really hard to effectively communicate with each other and decide on the best way forward for the entire network. And I think we're seeing that today on XRPL mainnet, where we have over 30 validators, but we cannot reach all participants, for example. So it's really hard to make decisions when it comes to voting, installing network updates, stuff like that. And then there's always the risk that at some point governance participants, validator operators on AUNL become amendment block because they didn't update. We don't want that. I think if we want to get ahead of the game and stay ahead of the game, we should communicate efficiently. So 20. Now, when we launch, we are going to launch with 5 clear governance participants as in their one entity, and we're going to launch with 2 pools. So I before I mentioned the nested governance. Where you have a first layer of governance. There at the actual accounts, they cast a direct vote. And then you can say it's almost like a signer list, right? You have a signer list of participants in one primary level governance group. So one of the 20 could be a signer list with a hook installed, and there can be a default hook, or the group can come together and create their own governance hook for their account. And they should collectively also run a validator and contribute to the network. So we identified 2 pools for when we launch, which is, of course, a pool of participants on the current mainnet, like developers, projects who have been supporting the XRPL ecosystem for a long time. And don't call us, we call you. At some point, when we're ready, We're just gonna have a nice conversation, and everyone can decide if they want to join. So that means that everyone who will cast their vote in that group will get their votes combined into one vote that counts as one of the 20 governance votes.
Yeah, so a nice way to visualize this is there's a round table that has 20 seats at it, and each seat might be full or vacant, and there might be one person sitting at that seat, one entity sitting at that seat. So each seat gets a vote, but there also might be another table of 20 seats sitting at that seat. And so if there's a layer 2 table there, then the layer 2 table, all of their seats have to first vote to raise a single vote to the layer 1 table. That's the way the governance structure works.
I see. Yeah, like nested, and that's actually really cool. Oh, Wojciech, do you want to go ahead before I pick up a question from the audience?
Yeah, so since there are layer 1 and layer 2 governance bodies, I do have a question. Are the transactions that are signed that act as the votes, I guess, from the governing body, are they needed to be signed by the master key, or could it be signed by a multi-sig body, so a signer list essentially?
You vote in the governance game using a invoke TT invoke transaction, and the way we envision it happening. So as long as the account that's installed on that seat at the layer 1 table raises a TT invoke, then the vote is cast. You theoretically could do that with a multi-signer list, but the way we envisioned it is that the exact same governance hook that's installed on the Genesis account, the layer 1 table, would also be installed on the layer 2 account. So an account sits at a seat at the layer 1 table, and that account itself has the exact same hook again installed as in the layer 1 table. And then the layer 2 participants that sit at that table use that same hook, but on their own account there, to basically tally votes. And then when they get to a threshold of 2/3, then it raises the TT invoke back to the Genesis account.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, this is a question. It's a broad question, but it's for Scott and Evernote. It's from the Evernote community, and they basically ask, what can the Evernote community do to further bootstrap Evernote and help you guys bootstrap it?
So the first thing you could do is run a host on BetaNet. The second thing you can do is read through the SDK and start playing around with deploying dApps to the BetaNet. And the third thing you can do is to join the community Discord that I think Vet and Wojciech host, and start contributing your ideas about what you would like to see happen. There's some talk at the moment of a hackathon, and I'm actually talking to some people at Ripple about trying to piggyback off one of their events or something of that order to try and organise an event of that nature. It's, to be honest, at the moment, it's been since 2018. It's been quite a long journey, and I'm focused on ensuring that the team has everything ready for launch. And I get it. It's fantastic that we've got people, particularly like Wojciech, who keeps on prodding me for things that we could or should be doing. And I love that people want to see it exist to that extent. But the team is working really hard just to deliver the main meat, and everything else will have to follow. What I would absolutely love, we are going to soon release a bulletproof version of our Nomad contract. So we had previously demoed an example of an Evernode contract that wanders the network, that shuts down a node and goes and finds itself another node to host on and purchases a slot on that host and pays for it and then shuts down another node. So it's a self-replicating contract. The one thing that we would love is someone to pick up our EVM project and run with it, particularly someone who's got more EVM experience. So what we demoed was a toy version of an EVM contract running on Evernode, where it's a contract and you could upload your Solidity code, your compiled Solidity code to it, and hey presto, you would be able to completely just cut and paste your project from Solidity and have it run as an Evernode contract. It's in our GitHub. It's open source. It's free to anyone to play with. It'd be fantastic to see that launch because we can do it. It's not a thing that is beyond Evernode to run EVM code in the cut and paste format. That would be fantastic. Other than that, jump on the Discord. What really helps my team is seeing, there's 3 guys in Sri Lanka from a former client of mine when I was a lawyer, and they really get excited from seeing people build on what they've built. So the more we do that, the better.
Awesome. Wojciech, do you want to comment on this from your side, because you're so engaged in the community there?
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure working with Richard Holland, Scott Chamberlain on the Evernote side of things, and especially the dev team. They've been very, very collaborative on the development part. They've taken into account of the community's comments and their contributions. It's been validated that they've done a great job at developing Hotpocket and, of course, the hosting marketplace in the form of a hook. Their hook is very interesting. I'd like to say that since Evernote relies on the XRP ledger to maintain a decentralized network for the platform, essentially, to maintain the registry or the list of active hosts on the ecosystem. And of course, it's being used to process payments in a trustless and decentralized manner. So anyone could join in as a host and start providing hosting services atop of Evernote. And to comment on the hook part, there are 3 hooks right now that Evernote is developing and will be launching, which are the registry hook, which maintains the list of hosts. There's the governance hook, which will maintain the governance game on Evernote. And there's also the heartbeat hook, meant to be used internally for hosts to keep up, to update their status on Evernote, either they're online or not, essentially. And I'd like to see Scott or Richard to talk about it more, I guess.
Which particular, do you mean the heartbeat hook or the hook in general?
The hook in general, but I'd like to emphasize on the governance game, really.
So our governance game hook, I don't think we've released all the details of how that's meant to work, but it's somewhat similar. The idea is the network is, it all comes down to the hook, and you can replace your hook with a new hook by a vote from all validators who hold a registration NFT and have done so for the last 3 months. And it's much like the XRPL voting, it's 80% of those who are eligible to vote voting in favour of a new hook for a 2-week period.
Yeah,
or thereabouts.
So just to be clear, the Evernote hooks will be installed on a Blackhold account. So that Blackhold account will issue Evers according to the logic inside those hooks, and but that's essentially immutable. So to allow for an upgrade pathway if there's a bug or the community wants a new feature or so on, the Evernote hosts, the people who are supplying hardware to the network essentially, can get together, and if 80% of them agree, then they can actually replace the hook on that account, or one of the hooks on that account. with a new version that has new features or fixes a bug or whatever.
I think Wojciech is about to open a can of worms with that one, because that's a super interesting topic and probably needs like kind of its own space, because otherwise we're just going to sit here for another 4 hours to discuss that. So I suggest, I mean, that's a topic I guess a lot of people would like to talk about. So maybe you guys can schedule a space and flesh that out. So because we're a bit limited on the time, so hate to cut you off.
So
I think
what I would add is the governance game. There's a lot of legal restrictions on how we structure the governance game, and there's a very good reason why validators are the ones that participate and not users as a whole. And that is, the validators are the ones that are the tokens on the network get issued to validators because they're the ones providing the services of the network, and so that we don't end up in all kinds of legal problems. They're also the ones, therefore, that vote on replacing hooks, and that won't ever change. There's no point discussing that.
Okay. As a final question, or the final two questions I would like to raise. Actually, it's three. Maybe Wietse can answer two of them in one shot. So a pressing question or interesting question is that people want to know what hooks will be available at launch, and then where do people go to stay up to date for hooks as well as Evernote? Maybe Scott can start, and then we're going to have Wietse closing this off.
Well,
yeah.
sorry, sure.
The hook.
Go.
Go ahead.
Let's have Scott first, and then
Sure.
we're going to do Wietse.
So, Evernote, we use our Twitter account to update everyone on what's happening with Evernote. There is a very bare bones website that was designed by yours truly, which is why it looks so rubbish. And it will be replaced by a new website once we go live. When we go live, there'll be a website that will be controlled by the Evernote Foundation. That will be a not-for-profit incorporated in Australia. It doesn't exist yet because there's no way you want to incorporate a new public entity before you have a reason for it to exist. So it's the Twitter account is the main way to be updated on what's happening with Evernote, and joining Wojciech's Evernote Discord is the best way to be involved in conversations surrounding Evernote.
Thanks. Yeah, Wietse, gonna bring us out.
Yeah, five hooks companioned by XApps on launch. There's the savings hook, which is of course automatic saving in our incoming or outgoing transactions. There's the firewall hook that will allow you to, for example, block low value memo spam transactions into your account and prevent yourself from sending way too high amounts to other accounts without a double check or time delay. There's the direct debit hook that I really like, where you can authorize another account to direct debit into your account with a max amount per time interval. So think getting a coffee on the train platform every workday. You just authorize the coffee corner to direct debit the coffee from your account, which allows you to get a tap and go experience in a self-custodial environment. And the payment watchdog, I just mentioned that under the firewall. Actually, the payment watchdog will prevent transactions going out of your account if the value is too high, for example, where you get a time delay that you can configure, and then you have to reconfirm your transaction, which gives you time to reconsider. And it also gives you time to, for example, make sure your account is safe again if a third party gets access to your key, if your key is compromised, because they cannot move it all out at the same time. And the final one is going to be the governance hook that lives on the network, of course, and we're going to create an accompanying XApp as well, so people can see who the governance participants are, what their votes are, things like that.
Great. Best resources to stay up to date for hooks?
I would say the Twitter account, our Twitter account, and if there's anything significant, it's going to be on the XRPL Labs blog, of course, like the security audit, things like that. But I tend to tweet every now and then with updates. It's not really structured data, but I would say it's the best channel if you also want to see the smaller advancements.
And now that Richard is also back, maybe he will also tweet the one other tweet.
Yep.
I wouldn't count on it,
but
maybe.
Great. Okay, guys, we're a bit over the time. So I would say thanks for everyone attending this nice space. If you still have additional questions, just keep sending them on Twitter. When I tag the right people, maybe Jake or Scott can set up a different call if there are a lot of Evernote questions. And I think that's it for today.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks for hosting,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming.
Cheers.